Sandra, for more on this, let's bring in Fox News contributor and former National Security Advisor General Keith Kellogg. General Kellogg, one of the biggest points of contention was whether or not the president acknowledged in that interview with George Stephanopoulos that he had been given advice or not given advice by his military leaders. Adam Smith, the chairman of the committee, really running a lot of cover for President Biden. So let's turn the clock. We can't turn the clock back just yet because apparently we don't have that sound. But let me just go to a Wall Street Journal editorial which said the scandal isn't that the president ignored military advice. He's the decision maker. It's his refusal to own his decision. Mr. Biden wants political credit for ending America's involvement in Afghanistan, but he's not willing to take the political risk of admitting he overruled the brass in the process. Your thoughts?
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. Yeah, I think that's important when you look at the context of what the military advisors gave him. When those decisions are made, they're made in the Situation Room in the White House because it's so secure. And it was interesting to me that the number 2,500 is very consistent. It was the same number that we came up with during the Trump administration, and everybody agreed to that. The intelligence community agreed to it, the CIA agreed to it, the Department of Defense agreed to it, the State Department all agreed to it. Everybody had that 2,500 number, and that was fixed in everybody's mind. So that number is consistent from the Trump administration to the Biden administration. And we told the president, President Trump, we would hold at that number until the agreements were fulfilled in the Doha Agreement. And the first agreement in the Doha Agreement, where there would be successful negotiations between the Taliban and the Ghani government to have a government of reconciliation. Everybody keeps talking about the Doha Agreement. Well, the Doha Agreement meant that we were not going to move until all of the conditions were met that were put forth in that agreement. So we weren't leaving. And the 1 May date was not a date certain. That was a forcing function to get there. And on the 3rd of March, President Trump had picked up the phone and called Mullah Baradar, the chief Taliban negotiator, and told him that quite clearly. John, I was in the Oval Office when he made the call. I heard what he said. In fact, if there's an ability, and I don't know if there is or not, you can release the transcript, and you can see what the president told him. So he knew it was conditions-based. He knew he had to get to a certain point. So everybody keeps focusing on the Doha Agreement. Here's where I would like to go. I would like to say, wait a second, to those 3 general officers on the dais, you know, you guys were there for over 20 years. You've been part of this. Where's the accountability in the military of training the Afghans and making them capable to withstand a Taliban attack going forward? They're responsible for that. And my question to everybody is, where's the accountability on this? Don't talk about it. Who owns this?
So, General, what's the answer to that? I mean, I think the American people, we know that there's great interest in watching this for some sort of transparency into how this decision played out, how these actions were taken, even when conditions weren't met, to your point. Milley, very straightforward in his acknowledgement that this was a strategic failure. So for those who are watching and wondering and thinking the same thing and asking themselves, so who is going to be accountable? What's the answer?
Yeah, Sandra, great question. You know, it's funny. If you're in the business world and your company fails, you get fired. If you're a sports team leader and your team doesn't do well, they get rid of you. A lot of politicians, you don't do well, you get thrown out too. It seems in the military there's a protection agency there that they're protecting all the former generals who were involved in this process. I think there needs to be an independent review, sort of like the 9/11 Commission or the Holloway Commission after Desert One, and find out how do we get to where we're at. And I would not include any single senior officer who's involved in the last 20 years. There were some strategic decisions that were made that were failures. And look, and more recently, there were actually some imbecilic decisions were made that caused this thing to fail. Everybody has to understand what we've got in the Middle East right now. We've got a mega terrorist state. When you put 3 countries together with contiguous borders, you've got Iran, state sponsor of terrorism, contiguous border with Afghanistan, which now has a worse government than we saw 20 years ago. It's much more harsh. And then you've got a nuclear Pakistan to the east, and all of them work together. I think there's a bigger problem than people are looking at right now and are thinking about.
General, we appreciate your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Good to see you, General. Thanks.
Thank you.